Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Town Hall for the LA theater community. What comes after #leaving Lhasa? I'm so happy to be here today facilitating this conversation. My name is Gabrielle Jackson. My pronouns are she, her. I am a dark-skinned Black woman wearing a black top and a black and gray head wrap. And I am coming to you today from the unceded land of the Tongva people. The Tongva are still here, and they are water protectors, and I honor them and this land that I sit upon. And I want to also introduce to you my co-host for the day, Dr. Raja. Can you tell everybody who you are?
Yes, thank you, Gabby. Such a blessing to be here. My name is Raja Bhattar. I use they, them pronouns. And namaskar to everyone. And for those of you that are celebrating Ramadan Mubarak, happy Ugadi, and all the other festivals that are starting. So it feels it's ripe and timely that we are celebrating this conversation about new beginnings and recreating and retelling this conversation. I'm really excited just thinking about all the. It's been a lot of stuff happening over the last couple of weeks, couple of months, and couple of years. And I think for me, I think about, in some ways, this is exactly the time for this conversation about theater and representation and equity to happen, given where we are as a world, because I believe that art, someone has said art is a reflection of life, right? And I feel like given all the uncertainties and struggles and fractures that we have unearthed over the especially last 15 months, I think this makes sense that we as a theater company have been, as a world, as a theater world, haven't done that yet. And so this feels like it's the right time for us to be able to do that. And for me, I sit with both exhaustion and pain and also excitement and hope for a future that actually is about centering voices that have been intentionally made invisible throughout our artistic system and process.
Agreed. Thank you so much, Dr. Raja. I'm so excited to hop into this conversation with you and with our panelists, who we'll introduce here in a moment. But before we do, I just wanted to call into the room the fact that we are having this conversation in the midst of so many things going on, right? Like Dr. Raja was saying, we have, over the last few months, have seen a great deal of media attention on the anti-Asian racism that's been happening in our country since forever, right? And we also are having this conversation on the backdrop of, my apologies, I get emotional, of yet another life that has been reduced to a hashtag through racist violence. On the heels of what is a trial to prove what we have all seen with our eyes and what we have all felt with our hearts. So I just wanted to, already here, bringing that into the space, and thank you all for being here tonight, despite what is going on in the world, and also because of what is going on in the world. Thank you all so much. I also wanted to offer a little bit of context just to contextualize the conversation we've been having. I wanted to offer kind of the backdrop that we're having this conversation on, as we have seen the last few months, as Dr. Raja was saying earlier, right? The summer of 2020 brought a resurgence of the Black Lives Matter movement on the heels of the deaths of Ahmaud Arbery, Tommy McDade, Breonna Taylor, and George Floyd. This conversation opened up space to speak candidly about race and inequity in the theater landscape, largely due to the work of Marie Sisko and the Theaters Not Speaking Out list, documenting theaters and their willingness to speak up on behalf of Black lives, as well as the BIPOC Living Document lists and their documentation of theaters' reputations with people of color within their organization. Recently, the Los Angeles Stage Alliance hosted its annual Ovation Awards ceremony, which sparked outrage after the organization misidentified and misrepresented several nominees, notably showing a photo of Monica Hong in place of Jully Lee while mispronouncing Jully's name, and replaced Mike Millan's photo with that of his white co-star. LASA also did not offer access to the deaf community through ASL interpreters or captions after direct asks from Deaf West Theater, who was nominated for awards that night. These things are symptoms of a larger issue, though, that speaks to the systemic inequity present in the American theater landscape on the whole, and also LA's theater landscape. I saw in our community Jamboard, if you haven't had a chance to check that out, I would love for you to do that. Now, go ahead and jump on over there. There's a lot of great community conversation, and we'd love to see that conversation continue. But I was looking through the Jamboard today, and I saw that someone equated LA theater with white theater, which is hard to hear as a Black practitioner, right? So I'm excited that today we get to continue a conversation that's been happening and continue to open up space. And tonight we'll hear from panelists who are not only close to the events of the last couple of weeks, but folks who work inside of the organizations working hard to rebuild LA's theater landscape. Tonight, we have the discussion, what comes after leaving LASA? I want to invite onto screen now our first panel of the evening. Can you all join us? Awesome. Thank you so much. Hi, welcome, welcome. I'm so glad to have you here. I'd like the panelists to introduce themselves and give us a little background on what your place in the LA theater landscape looks like. And DJ, I'd love to start with you. Oh, you're muted, Francesca. Thank you so much. Let's get those.
I think I was unmuted. Am I still muted?
You're good now. We can hear you now.
I was unmuted. DJ Kurs, artistic director from Deaf West Theater. He, his are my pronouns. I'm on the indigenous lands of the Tonga, the Tataviam and Chumash people, including the Gabrieleño, Fernandeño, and Venturiano, on the lands of the indigenous people of Los Angeles County and the surrounding areas. I'm wearing a blue jacket. I have a white background with two light sconces behind me that are blue. And I'm honored to be here with this great group of panelists, and I stand with all of you. And thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, DJ. Awesome. And Snehal, we'll take it over to you. I see you next.
Hi, everyone. My name is Snehal Desai. I'm the producing artistic director of East West Players. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm coming to you from the unceded land of the Tonga. And I'm wearing a plaid type shirt and have a lot of books behind me.
Thank you, Snehal. Thank you so much. And Michaela, I see you next.
Hi there, my name is Michaela Bulkley. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a producer and strategic planner, and in the context of this conversation, I'm also the former director of programs at LA Stage Alliance. Specifically, I ran the Ovation Awards program. I am currently calling in from the traditional land of the Chumash, Tongva, and Quiche people. I am a white woman with long, dark brown hair, red lipstick on, and I have a beige wall with a partial view of a large clock behind me.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Mike, I'll pass it over to you.
Hi, my name is Mike Millan. My pronouns are he, him, his. I am grateful to and acknowledging of the land of the Tongva people that I stand on and I'm coming to you from. I am very, very excited about this. Just wanted to say thank you to everyone that's being a part of this, anyone that's watching. I am a queer person of color. I am a multi-hyphenate in LA, if you can even imagine that. I'm coming to you from a white room with plants in the background, and I have big curly hair, I have big brown eyes, and a beard that is excited to be smiling for most of the time tonight.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mike. And Jully, I'll pass it to you last but not least.
Thank you, Gabby. I'm Jully Lee. Pronouns are she, her. I come from the unceded lands of the Tongva and Chumash people, currently known as Glendale, California. I am Asian American. I have long black hair, wearing a green blouse in front of a very white wall with natural-ish makeup. And I'm happy to be here.
Amazing. Thank you all so much. I want to start the conversation with reference to one of East West Players' first hashtag Leaving Lhasa graphics. It has a passage that reads, "These awards are supposed to be about raising the visibility of LA's theater community and celebrating our artists." So who makes up LA's theater community? Well, we had a Jamboard discussion about it, and we've got all sorts of people. We've got LGBTQ folks. We've got lots of people who are coming in from the Latinx community. We've got Filipina folks. We've got Indigenous folks. Someone said that they are Black, queer, and thriving. Okay, we have so many people who this community represents, right? And who we seek to represent in our work. I just wanted to talk a little bit with you before we start. Dr. Raja, I think it would be really interesting here to hear a little bit about what it means to belong in community.
Oh. It's one of my favorite questions, Gabby. Belonging is kind of my life's work. I think having gone through my doctoral program, I realized we often talk about diversity and equity and retention and all these systems that are metric based, but often are defined by people who are often in power. And so all the systems that we use to even assess equity and accessibility are still developed by often white, cis, het, male, middle class, Western, European, English-centric, US-centric perspectives, which often leads the rest of us to still continue to play this game to align with whiteness and align with dominant identities to simply be seen. Where for me, belonging is about how I perceive it, right? And belonging has been seen to be an important framework that is relevant at cultures around the world. So it's not just a US-centric notion of what is culture, what is power, what is identity. So belonging is really the perception that we get from whether or not we are welcome in a place, whether or not there are services when we ask for a service, like interpretation, is it available to us, or is it, I've been a vegetarian my whole life, and there'll be conferences that say, "What's your dietary need?" And I'll say I'm a vegetarian, and then I'll go there and there won't be any option. So like while you're speaking belonging, your behavior is not aligning with belonging. So belonging is the alignment of your articulated values, your performed actions, and your engaged beliefs in practice in an authentic way.
Wow. Thank you so much for contextualizing that. I love that you said that this is your values, your actions, and your beliefs coming together in an engaged way. What we saw and what we experienced was probably not the most relevant example of belonging. I think what we saw was a case study in what it means to exclude folks and not ensure that people belong. But we won't, I want to hear from each and every one of you tonight, so I won't take too much longer on these things. Snehal, I did want to ask you, you started a movement. You started a movement. I thought that was a beautiful thing. I thought it was incredible that the beautiful and multifaceted community of Los Angeles showed up for you. Was that what you expected when you posted that first hashtag Leaving Lhasa graphic?
Thank you, Gabby, and thank you, Raja, for leading us today. And yeah, I am the least tech-savvy social media person, so I thought it would be the last one that would ever create anything that would trend, if you will. But I just want to, take a moment. First of all, I want to live in this chat. It's so great to see everyone together. It feels like a virtual opening night. I think we have over more than 350 people joining us today. So thank you all. And I also just want to say thank you to the entire community, both the organizations and our inspiring community of artists, for the overwhelming show of support and solidarity. I will only speak for myself, but I can not tell you how humbling it felt, but also how supported. I will say I felt by you, but I think everything I've heard from the East West Players community is also that they feel the same. And Jully is with us, and I think Jully and Mike and DJ, will speak about how they felt through all of this. I just want to also lift up that we live in challenging, but what I also think are transformative times. As you mentioned, it's only been 5 weeks since the shooting in Atlanta. The trial of Derek Chauvin is happening right now. And we, another Black man, Dante Wright, was just shot by the police in Minneapolis, or in Brooklyn Center, exactly. So, we are all hurting, but communities of color right now are being ravaged on two sides, one by COVID and one by the violence and hateful rhetoric. So, I think you could say that the tolerance for things like mispronouncing a name or misidentifying someone could, yes, be dismissed as a mistake, which, by all means they happen. But again, I'll speak for myself. When you live in my skin, those mistakes happen each and every day. And whether they're intentional or they are not, they aggregate, right? They build a narrative that we all look the same, that we are interchangeable, that we are not worth the effort to learn how to say our name or to take that time. And speaking to a theater community, there are two things. One, as language and words matter. And the other thing is, if you can say, Ivan Vasilievich, you can say Jully Lee or Snehal Desai, right? And we can take that time, and we're happy to do that. But there always seems to be this disjunction. The last two other things is that there never seems to be a right moment to speak up about these things, right? So our speaking up was not intended to diminish the awardees of the night, who I think are fabulous artists who deserve to be recognized. But I think, for myself, for the EWP community, we want folks to be recognized for their artistry and achievements in an equitable, belonging, inclusive landscape, where, the celebration can happen for everyone. And so with that all being said, with the statement, I think we're all at this place where we are beyond statements of support, right? We want action. We want accountability, which means timelines and benchmarks of progress. And so with everything that was happening, I myself didn't want to just have us put out a statement. I wanted us to have a call to action. And in theater, we seek to show, not tell, right? And so that's what the initial call was. There was no coordination or outreach to anyone. And we wanted to take our own stand at East West Players and take our power back and let others choose what they wanted. And I cannot say I was not worried that it would be crickets, and not the artistic sound, wonderful Myers kind of cricket. But, and the community really showed up and stepped up. And so again, I just want to say how grateful we are for all of that in the moment.
Wow. Thank you so much for that answer, Snehal. So many things jumped out at me that you said. You mentioned benchmarks of progress. And I think that's such an important point, right? Because I think, Michaela, in one of the articles that I read on your website, you said something along the lines of, it's not enough to continue to do these EDI trainings, and it's not enough to continue to do, these talk backs. It's more about that action, right? And the action of the moment is something that has carried us, into so many different conversations about what's going to happen next. And I would just I will pose this question to the whole panel. What do you think the response to this means about where people are at in wanting a more representative theater community?
I'll actually start because I knew that question was coming, and so everyone's percolating. You know, the two things that I also want to highlight is the speed at which everyone stood up for each other, right? I don't think that would have happened in June. I think sometimes it takes, you know, days, if not weeks, to vet these statements and to wordsmith them. And, you know, folks just publicly stood up as organizations and individuals, and that takes strength and leadership. So I do want to say that is what does feel very different in this time and is heartening. And then the other thing is that I feel like as a community, our values on the larger issues of the day seem to align, right? I think that's what we're seeing in this moment. And so that the hope is that whatever organization or organizations come next, that they reflect those shared values. And there's a eye towards collective liberation of all of our communities, not to go way lofty, but I think it's like, you know, if we're keeping eyes on the prize of where we want to go and where we want to be, and as storytellers, that is, you know, what I hope is our central narrative.
Wow. Incredible. That's incredible. Thank you so much for saying that, Snehal. DJ, I want to go over to you for a moment, because another huge part of this conversation, we're talking about collective liberation, just like Snehal just said, you know, and another huge piece of this conversation was that Deaf West was specifically able to address was that this show was not accessible to the deaf community. And Deaf West statements cite the ableism that, quote, plagues the theater community. And I was thinking about this even as part of a larger conversation about things like Ali Stoker at the Tony Awards a few years ago, and how no one made sure that she could comfortably move on and off the stage, even though she was a nominee. So, like, what can we do as a community to ensure that conversations around inclusion and belonging don't just stop at the intersections of race and gender and sexuality, but also extend into conversations surrounding accessibility?
Well, thank you, first of all, to East West Players for leading us into where we are today. I saw your post and was immediately inspired, and it, you know, ignited conversations in my community. The erasure of theaters of color, the erasure of people of color who are actors. And there's such an overlay of many different issues here, including access. So all of these different oppressive layers of racism, autism, ableism are all interconnected. And so I'm so grateful for this opportunity tonight for us to come together and stand together against what happened. And also knowing, keeping in mind that we are fortunate enough to work with Ali Stoker, for example, when she was working with us in that 99-seat theater here in Los Angeles for Deaf West. And really, you know, we are deeply rooted in access. It's part of our blood. It's part of who we are and our identities. And we face these different oppressive measures of the larger community every day. We eat, breathe, sleep, bleed access, right? So we may think, oh, wheelchair access isn't a big deal and it might come to our minds later, but we must be proactive and figure it out beforehand, not afterwards. So we cannot accept this as theater makers. And I know that we have, 1,000 comments and posts on our page, but we do have to recognize that access is equally important as ticket sales, for example. And I really do believe that we can internalize these beliefs that we are espousing and make them become real for our communities. And we just have to take a deeper look. People need to listen to what we're saying. People need to ask questions. And then once we have the information we need, we can move forward together.
Wow. Thank you so much, DJ. I love what you're saying about moving forward together as a unit, right? As a community. Speaking of community, I was floored, and I think I mentioned this to you, Jully. I was floored by the way that people came. We spoke a little bit. You didn't know it was me, but I was on the JJI Instagram talking to you. And I was floored by the way that this community came and held you. But this has got to be, I can imagine this is a moment of intense hyper focus on you. So I want to ask first, how are you feeling?
Yeah, like I'm the object of intense hyper-focus. Thank you, Gabby. Actually, you're the one who first came up with the word for me when you said held. And I was like, yes, that is exactly how I feel. So thank you for like knowing how I feel about, about all of this. Thank you, Gabby. You're right. I didn't know it was you. So I'm glad I do now.
Of course.
This has been incredibly overwhelming. The weeks leading up to the Ovation Awards, I had been posting on social media and everything about how I felt about Asian American invisibility, right? Mm-hmm. And then the Ovation Awards happened, and then it was like overnight, I am so visible. Holy cow! What do I do with this? That there was so much. I mean, so much on social media, emails, texts, phone calls. So it was very overwhelming. But honestly, it was overwhelming and a little bit scary to be so visible in the public eye. But I just felt very honored and privileged to be in that position, because I think the outrage and the frustration that people were expressing, I didn't see it as they were feeling these things on behalf of me. Like, oh, Jully's experiencing this. It was like they saw themselves in what happened to me. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was a beautiful thing, because collectively there was this outpouring of that pain and hurt of being invisible. And, I just happened to be the person that it happened to, like on a public scale. It wasn't public at first, but it became public. I mean, New York Times ran an article, so all of a sudden everyone knew about it. So whatever hurt feelings I had personally or ego bruising was totally worth it. I'm just honored to be in this position. And I also want to say I am so full of pride. When Snehal put out that statement, my mind was blown, because I thought up until that point, I thought our only recourse was to complain. These things happen all the time. We get apologies. It's okay. Do better, right? But Snehal said, you know what? No, this is enough. I'm out of here. And if you think this is enough to join me. And I was like, holy cow, what a call to action that was. That was so bold. And seeing that swift response from all the theaters, it was like all the theaters were kind of waiting for that permission to say, yeah, we need to leave because this is not working for us. So thank you, Snehal. You are the boss. And thank you to all the theater companies that stood up, especially to those, not especially, but including the theater companies who maybe weren't feeling marginalized, but felt like they had to be allies in this mission. So I want to thank every single theater company who joined this movement.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jully, I have one more question for you, because I thought this was really powerful, what you said, and I kind of wanted you to talk a little bit more about it. You mentioned in your statement, your original statement, that you were just a, quote, placeholder in all of this. What do you mean by that?
Well, clearly this mistake wasn't personal, because the producers at the Ovation Awards don't know who I am, so it couldn't be personal against me. So being the placeholder, like what is a placeholder? It's kind of a thing that you put in there so that we can move on and move forward. And I thought that it just happened, like I just happened to be the person that took that space to allow for this catalyst to happen. So it wasn't about me, it was about everybody that was experiencing these frustrations, and to allow for, people like Snehal to be like, that's enough. Because clearly this wasn't about a mispronounced name. If that's all it was, of course, come on. But Snehal's totally right on. It's that aggregate experience of all of these aggressions, microaggressions, and now it's gotten to the point of assault, physical assault, and that's what the AAPI community has been swimming in for the last year. And not to mention the decades of the oppression and discrimination that our community has been facing, but particularly in this past year, it's been very, very scary. I have a friend who flew out to New York to film a TV show, and he expressed on WhatsApp, I'm feeling scared, not only because of COVID, but I'm scared to go to New York because there have been so many assaults happening in New York in these public spaces. So, what happened to me, it just happened to be me.
Mm-hmm. And something I noticed too, that a lot of what happened to you also happened to Mike Millan, who is with us tonight. But Mike, you were largely left out of the conversation. And to me, that says a couple of things. I got my little green pencil here, y'all. I'm sorry. But to me, that says a couple of things. It says that these apologies to Jully were not apologies to her directly. Obviously, they weren't to her directly because they were not directed at her. They were apologies, as you said, for her as a placeholder, but also that Mike, they felt entitled to be able to wrong you in some way because you did not share in any sort of identity that was a response to a political movement to them. And Jully did. So to me, that also says that this was performance, right? Performing the actions we need to perform in order to move forward, in order to stop the conversation, as Jully was saying before. So I think that's really important. And Mike, I love your Instagram tagline so much. You identify yourself as, quote, a gay fantasia on national themes. That to me is everything.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And you also mentioned in your initial reactions that you were used to being without community, being a person of mixed race. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Absolutely. I'll try to sum it up in a quick, cute little blurb. But as far as the gay fantasia on national themes, that is sort of a subtitle of Angels in America by Tony Kushner. And it just always sort of spoke to me because I think as a mixed race person, I'm Puerto Rican and Italian. And as somebody who never really had a firm sort of stance in either, I always sort of flocked to gay culture and sort of being this sort of rainbow alliance that I really identify with. And so when this all happened, it was one of those things, it was such a moment because I just moved to LA about 3 years ago, and coming from New York in a very sort of white industry that the Broadway community tends to sort of navigate its narratives through, it was always sort of keep your head down, stay quiet, just sort of keep it going because you don't want to mess up your next job. And there was only so many, there's only so many times I could sort of hear, I'm not ethnically offensive enough, which is a direct quote I've gotten for certain things. I'm too ethnically offensive for other things. It's that hearing that I decided this can't be the only way of doing this. And I was lucky to come here. And when everything happened, I obviously, when awards mean very little to me, honestly, but when it all happened, I was like, this is very exciting. I've never really been seen for my performances before. I don't care about the award. It just means so much that I'm being seen, which is very big for me. And then to have that sort of completely turn on its head and not be seen and be completely erased, was at first just, I went into sort of survival mode and sort of laughed it off and was like, oh gosh, look at this. And then I started really thinking, and I have a history, there's a long history of sort of me questioning, why was I not treated with the same sort of respect, dignity, and sort of importance that other people are treated with? And I think a lot of it does have to do with being mixed race. I think as a mixed race person, what's challenging is my parents, for instance, are not mixed race themselves. So they never really instilled in me as a mixed race person what it's like to grow up with this sort of constant, where do I fit in this world? And we're living in a very sort of, you know, what box are you in? Where do we put you? And so when this all happened with Jully getting a lot of the attention for this, rightfully so, I took the mixed race sort of place to sort of just listen and to be supportive and to say, yes, this happened to me, but it's not super about me in this situation. But with that, my boyfriend was actually very, very helpful in saying, like, you should go out there and say something. You should not just let this get swept under the rug, because that's what they kind of are expecting you to do. And seeing the sort of fake apology that they gave Jully, and then they didn't even reach out to me. I reached out to them and I said, hey, like, I think you need to do better with this. I feel really sort of erased from this. And they didn't respond until sort of the next day. And it was this kind of constant. And then I was kind of met with we're working on it. We're going to do everything that we can to make it work. And I said, okay, well, how? Which I think is such an important question that we always have to ask, is how do you plan on doing that? Because it's very easy to sort of wish upon a star. And we're all very theatrical people who want to believe in the happy ending of it all. But we have to find out how we get to that point. And they still haven't answered that question. So I was left with a sort of, okay, I can either take this and internalize it the way that I'm used to, or I can actually start building a community for people that feel the same way that I do, because I do not have the same experience as somebody who identifies solely as a singular race. But I think I've always sort of been around people that are mixed race. And even if their races aren't mixed with the same races that I am mixed in, there's a sort of known understanding that there's always a line. We always have to sort of figure out where we can speak up and where we have to just sort of be silent and supportive. And this really felt like a sort of, let's speak up on it now, because I think as a sole actor myself, I have been looking for someone to take the lead, right? Which I'm not proud of. I wish we could all just, Norma Ray ourselves out there and just like lead the charge. And thankfully, we have people like you, Gabby, and Snehal. We have everybody that's here. But I was like, okay, this is the moment. This is the time to really say, I want to be a part of the change. I don't want to be a part of continuing the same archaic world that we've lived in. We know what it's like. We've seen it. And I'm bored of the show, huh? You know what I mean?
Okay.
I'm just like, there are so many, I think there's such, you asked before sort of like where people are, like what we kind of think the community is doing. And I really genuinely feel like everybody is waiting for these different stories to be told and to be heard, but we're just needing that sort of spark. And seeing the way the AAPI community lifted me up is like, I could actually cry about it. It was very, very beautiful. And I'm so thankful to my friend Nathan Ramos Park, who literally said, okay, let's go, let's get them, let's lead this charge. And that sort of mentality is so important, because we are all used to just having to be quiet. And we are all used to just saying, okay, it'll get better. Let me, one day. Well, the day is now, okay? Because we do not have time. We have to get it's done. And to see the supportive, we have the ability also. Everything is burnt down in a way, And so we have to take this time to plant these seeds and to grow the beautiful garden that we are capable of.
Yes. And also to play in its blooms, right? Because we could have this right now if we want it, if we all get together. Speaking of things that are happening right now, Mike, thank you so much for saying that this is a moment for us to move forward into. And someone who stepped up inside of this moment and spoke up pretty loudly about a community that she was a part of at one point. Michaela, I want to throw it to you for a moment, because what I noticed about this situation is that there was a lack of checks and balances. It felt like there was a lack of power share. And so a lot of these mistakes that happened that made people feel and misidentified people and dishonored people's humanities, right, were a result of a lack of power share in my imagining. But I'll say this, I'll ask you this. It seemed to me, as someone outside of the organization, that the disbanding of the org felt a little more like a result of the mounting pressure to be accountable for its actions, past and present, especially after such a declarative accountability statement this summer. To an outsider looking in, it felt a bit like the org decided that solving the problems was too hard and that they didn't want to be responsible for being accountable to the community. Can you offer a deeper perspective for us from your point of view, and then also talk to us a little bit about where you think the community can head next?
Yeah, of course. I think a lot of this conversation is really interesting about the personification of LA Stage Alliance when they have not had a staff or any sort of infrastructure since July. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of I'm not going to say that like the staff was working on solving racism in LA theater. Like, we're not that powerful, but there was a lot of conversations of where does LA Stage Alliance fit in these conversations, specifically starting in June. And the concept of like, were these problems too big to solve? I think really the struggle is, what are the actual problems? And there was a lot of problems that the public didn't see, specifically within like leadership holding itself accountable to what the community needed. So the lack of accountability, I truly think, was happening before the Ovation Awards this year even started. I think it happened as far back as 2015, that we were having leaders that were just not accountable to what they said they were going to do or to the staff themselves. And so that's where it becomes really interesting of who is LA Stage Alliance. And when we say they don't want to be held accountable or they don't want to do this work, it's really about like, well, who's going to do the work? Because I know, you know, the ORC was doing the work. Mark Dorr was doing the work. Myself and Courtney Clark were doing the work. But was the board doing the work? Absolutely not. Was previous executive directors doing the work? Absolutely not.
So it comes down to a lack of connection, it feels. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm sure it comes down to a lack of connection and interconnectivity, which we're seeing a lot of inside of LA's theater landscape as a whole, right? A lack of connectedness within the community, right?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
So then what do we do to move forward? And I'll start with you, Michaela, and I'll open this up to the panel as well. What do we do to move forward to ensure that after the spotlight fades away from this moment, that we are still focused and driving forward towards what comes after leaving LASA? Michaela?
Yeah. So the answer I have to that always makes a lot of people really uncomfortable because it's about decentering who was in charge earlier. And that, unfortunately, was a lot of older white theater companies that were upholding a lot of these problems. And so moving forward, decentering those power structures, and I'm not saying that they cannot create theater. I'm not saying that predominantly white institutions are banned from LA theater, but knowing that they are no longer in charge of it and they are no longer the predominant voice, that's going to be a very uncomfortable change for a lot of people. And that's something that we have to do to move forward. And I think we are starting to see that. So I'm very, very grateful for that. Oh, and my cat has joined the conversation.
Hello. Thank you so much, little kitty friend, for joining the conversation. I also want to open up we have about 1 minute left. So I want to open up to the rest of the panel. Did anyone have something that they want to say about what comes after leaving LASA?
Great. I have a couple of things, and then Mike, I see your hand also. I think there, I want to echo what Michaela says. The other things are, I think the decentralizing thing that Michaela said is the key, because as long as we have one institution where all of the kind of power is gathered, we're going to still run into these issues. The other thing is, as we work forward, we have to know that this work of equity, inclusion, diversity, belonging is never done. So you have to have a model that is malleable and able to evolve and grow, right? We can't have these fixed systems. Otherwise, we're gonna just be in the same cycle. And I think tied to that, if we have awards, we want awards celebrating the work now and also where we're going, right? I think that's where it was about the co-pros and stuff like that. Coming back from COVID, people are gonna lose their spaces. Cost of production is going to go up exponentially. So more and more collaboration is going to happen. So let's lift that up. Let's cross-pollinate our communities and our audiences. And so I think that's where it is on terms of the awards front. And then I think the other thing is, as Michaela was also hinting, it is going to be messy for a while, and it's going to be hard conversations. And I think as long as we can keep our eyes on the prize, the other thing is, I think we shouldn't be scared if we don't know what it looks like at this moment, right? I actually think that is better because there's a rush to fix or to adjust, and we can actually dream something forward, right? We are creative industry and field. And so, we just have to utilize that creativity, but also change and reframe what we want to be the central narrative about LA theater, which now there is this one other narrative, and what are we going to do moving forward? So I just think the conversation is going to continue in the second half with another group. I see some comments about that. I just think those are the things, but I really think is it one entity or does it want to be more diffuse? Because we are such a big, broad field with so many folks. It doesn't need to live with one group. And I also want to give a shout out to our friends at Artists at Play, who were also sparking the things the night of in real time as occurrences were happening at the awards. So I just forgot to mention that earlier. So thank you guys at Artists at Play, Marie, Jully, and Stephanie.
Thank you so much, Snehal. Mike, did you want to say something as well?
I mean, Snehal hit everything on the head. Honestly, I mean, really got everything. You did it. You did it. I'm like, just be really nice to each other. No, but I think I think the main important thing, what we've learned, is how important it is to make this just a lifelong commitment. I think we've seen many businesses, industries fail because we're trying to put a quick Band-Aid over it and still have white voices sort of then still try to represent people of color. You cannot have any change unless there are people of color in the room making the change. Otherwise, we're just doing the same thing with a different bow on it. And I'm just so, I hate to sound condescending, but so proud of all of you, everybody listening out there. The fact that we're even having this conversation is truly the step one. And Gabby, I think you especially, and everybody that's been a part of it, Snehal, you've all really, unfortunately, you are the leaders that we're all looking to, I think, right now. So you have to do it. No, but there's such a large community. Seeing the outcry of people, there's a need for it, there's a want for it, and more than anything, I think there is a willingness to put the work in. And I think we got nothing to do right now. So I think the time is now to start getting everything started. So I'm really excited.
If I can add.
Oh, go on. Yeah.
No, I think just hearing you all just makes me think of this, one of my favorite quotes by Gloria Anzaldúa, one of our Latinx ancestors, right? She says, "Caminante no hay puentes, se hace puentes al andar." Like, there are no bridges, Voyager. We build them as we go. And I think this is people of color, underrepresented communities in theater, but every other field that we talk about, we are known for our creativity when we are allowed to flourish and know that there is something that we're building to. And the other piece is that we know that what makes particularly POC-centric theater and diversity-centered and equity-centered theater different is that we know that we're not building this for ourselves. We're building this for the future that's ahead for people that will come way long after us. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And thank you to our panelists for joining us here in this moment. I'm so glad that we were able to chat with all of you. And I'm looking forward to continuing the conversation. I know we've seen an outpouring of support for everyone directly involved in the event, which has been beautiful in the last few weeks. But once the news cycle refreshes and the pressure wears off, it's important for us not to go back to normal. What we know now more than anything else is that normal was clearly not working. So the LA theater community has to come together to continue to hold you up as individuals and in your respective organizations in support, even after this intense moment of focus has worn off. Thank you all so much for joining us, friends. I'm so glad to have had you all here with us tonight. Thank you. What an incredible conversation. We've already started something so beautiful, Dr. Raja. I think this is amazing.
Well, and I think, Gabby, to your point, one, like you're doing an incredible job facilitating and just really bringing the voices to the group. But the other piece I'm noticing, even in the chat, right, that there's a desire to be heard, to be seen, to be held, to what Jully said. That holding is, I think, our strength as a community, right? And I was doing a research project recently, and we were talking about how do we talk about people of color, and it's like, why do we even say people of color? Because it's an opposition to whiteness, right? There's almost like it's still centering whiteness even when we say that. And so I started saying people of the global majority, because literally there's more freaking people of us in the world than there are of white people. And so what does it mean for us as equity-minded folks to even just reshift and reframe what is normal and what terms we use? And so that's what I think this both the chat and also the conversation makes me really excited about.
Same. I agree. I know I'm just having a chance to look over at this very active chat over here. And I'm seeing
Keep it coming. Keep it coming.
Right, exactly. Please keep speaking in the chat, keep speaking up. We're flashing your commentary on the screen. I know I've seen a lot of folks who have had their comments pushed forward, and so I'm so excited. Also, Dr. Raja, you just brought up something really important, right? That like we are now seeing ourselves as people of the global majority, right? But I think what you said to me yesterday was such an important part of what I've been thinking about is like this power structure, right? Where there's somebody in power and someone who is not, right? And then what happens when you flip that power structure is that, you know, whoever wasn't in power is now in power. Can you speak a little bit to like what the dangers of that could be, or like how we can move forward in a way that is productive and constructive with that in mind?
Well, and it's enticing, right? Because we see power as active, because that's what we see manifested in systems of dominance, right? The people with the power are attractive, the white folks, the people with lots of money, the heterosexual folks. Like the normalization of that experience is like, for many of us that have to walk through the world always questioning, to Jully's point, of being a placeholder and feeling like we are simply made invisible for the sake of someone else. We are serving like our whole existence for someone else's reality, which is really tragic. So when we strive for power, when we just, and I think this is where, to Snehal's point of, we can't just recreate something and say, well, now we have people of color in power, because representation, as a friend of mine says, kinfolk or skinfolk ain't kinfolk, right? So people of color, you know, can also be oppressive, because we have internalized 500 years of this type of oppression and colonization in the work that we do. And so wanting power cannot be the approach that we do for equity. It has to be empowerment, access, resources, and distribution, and actual, not even just representation, but actual inclusion and belonging. I mean, that's why I think belonging is such an important word. It's like you have to feel like your whole existence matters, and that mattering then leads to not just a sense of but like to fight to be there, but to actually change the system. And so often what happens is people with power, people who are oppressed, there's often revolutions, and so then people who are oppressed get power, but the system still exists. The system and the structure and the foundation itself is not at all attacked. So it's easy for people to get corrupted with power and violence. And so what we really need to do is like figure out ways to like deconstruct the system, and then actually be able to untangle it, so we can actually figure out how we can actually create something that allows for all of us to be intertwined, and in a Buddhist context be, you know, recognize our interbeing and our need for healing. And that's when I think the change happens.
Oh, you have so many excellent points there, Dr. Raja, and I am so excited to continue to get into this conversation with you and continue to get into this conversation with our panelists. Right now, though, I would like to offer the space to Gary Grossman and Martha Dimson to talk about their respective organizations. Hi there, welcome. We're going to get out of your way and let you speak, all right? Thank you so much.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here. We are just the interlude before. Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here. We are just the interlude before. Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here. We are just the interlude before. Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here. We are just the for being.
Well, let's see if I can speak without repetition. Okay, Gary, I'm going to just launch in for a moment. Gabby, hi.
I think we're good.
Repetition. Okay, Gary, I'm going to just launch in for a moment.
I'm going to have our tech team mute mic real quick. Okay, thank you so much. Martha, I wanted to talk to you. I'm so excited. I had them send me back in because I'm super excited to chat with you about your org. Could you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yes, absolutely, I will. So I am the current board president of the Theatrical Producers League of Los Angeles, which is a pretty young organization. We formed an action committee, a transitional committee back in 2013 in the wake of all the 99-seat plan noise, and decided that we needed to form a trade association, which is a 501c4, which is an organization which represents producers in union negotiation, is dedicated to the betterment of the theater and the brand identity of Los Angeles theater in particular. So it took about 18 months to put those bylaws together and get everything set up, but we have been going since then. And I think that 2020 has finally really shown the value of having this particular type of organization at our disposal, because it allows us to lobby, it allows us to engage with unions in all different kinds of work. So the two big things that we've been working on in 2020 have been COVID safety first. So we got together with representatives of all the labor unions to come up with guidelines for a safe return to live performance. And our ultimate recommendations out of that process have informed the Department of Public Health in California and in the County of Los Angeles.
Wow.
And then the second part is, of course, the lobbying part. So another existential threat that came up this year was AB 5, which was the law that requires all organizations to pay a minimum wage for every hour worked. And most of our organizations had for decades been paying artists and other art workers as independent contractors. And this is really
it's not letting me into it's saying the studio is full. Is that right?
So what we did first off was we were talking with legislators, we were looking for a champion, and we were looking to perhaps find an exemption from this for our very small organizations. Mm-hmm. Now we're working on something that is much more exciting with all of the relief funding that is coming into the state. We're asking that a very large subsidy fund be set up for payroll so that we are, in fact, as a community, able to pay everyone minimum wage.
That is so excellent.
Really exciting, and it's going to take a lot of advocacy and a lot of support, but I do believe the moment is exactly right now, because we have a community in need, a community that has been sidelined for over a year. We have the money coming in from the federal government in relief, and we have an opportunity to change our cultural landscape going forward into something that is much more equitable, much more inclusive, and with with appropriate remuneration.
That's incredible. And Gary, we just have 1 minute left here, so can you tell us?
I'm now back, I guess.
Awesome. Tell us just in 1 minute about your organization.
Well, very quick. I mean, we've been meeting since March of last year. There's 70 intimate theaters that meet every Tuesday, talking about everything that's been going on, from the EBIA to what Martha's been talking about, the advocacy and all of that. We're so excited to have this group, that you put this thing together, and we're happy to partner in this. I'd like to turn it back over to the panel so we can get the work done. So
incredible. Thank you so much, Gary. Thanks for joining us. Wow, amazing. Great, friends. I'm so excited. And this next panel, speaking of excitement, I cannot wait. Dr. Raja, we have with us another panel of incredible theater makers, and we are going to talk to them today about what it means to be able to create what comes next, right? And how we as a community can come together and create what comes next. And you know what? I heard you say something about what it means to have access, to continue to be able to build on community and what that means for us together. So can you tell me, Dr. Raja, what it means to remove barriers to access and be able to fully really understand each other and represent each other so that our ideologies can come together and move forward?
Yeah. Oh, such a packed question. I feel like there's a dissertation in here and probably a great interpretive dance theater piece that we can create around this too, right?
I'm so ready.
Given all the chance, I would love to actually just take all the comments and make a little theater piece out of that too. I think that would be a fascinating piece there. No, but I think to your point, it does require us to I think about a moving walkway. So Dr. Beverly Tatum, who's a brilliant scholar who wrote the book called Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria, if you're familiar with it. One of my favorite books. I read it 25 years ago and I still go back to it like every 3 to 4 years when I like need that little kickstart again about why we do this work. But she talks about, that there's it's like a moving walkway. In airports, you have the moving walkways, right? And so for some people, some people are not just they're like running past the walkway. Those are the folks that are, that want supremacy to exist because that allows them access and resources, and they enjoy having the power and privilege. Versus and so those are often we name as the right wingers, as whatever extremists that we want. That's the folks that know that there's power inequities and use it for their personal gain, which is often defined by social status and historical scientific systems that were created to inequitably align resources. Then there's folks who are passive, right? There's like people who are like, well, I'm not a racist. I'm not a KKK member. I'm not a sexist. I'm not one of those people. But they're passive and they're just hanging out, right? And so like, even though they're just passive, they're still benefiting from the system. And then there's people who try to resist. So then there's like, if you ever try to turn around in a moving walkway, you can turn around, but the machine is still going in the direction you go, right? And so you can try to resist by yourself. And so this is what I am learning in this work, is that, and I'm a kid that went to college during 9/11. So as a brown genderqueer kid in Boston as 9/11, I realized like trying to fight by myself wasn't going to work. And so what, Beverly Tatum talks about is like, you have to actually get other people to move and turn around with you. And that's when you actually change the walkway. It's that you can't do this. And so for me, I think how we do it is we build community, which is exactly what's happening today. And then we also think about how do we actually do it in a way that isn't just opposing what existed before, but that's also still centering what existed before. It's still centering the dominance. So it's allowing us to, and I think to Snehal's point, and we talked about this yesterday, Gabby, that you can take out a garden and you can't just plant all the things that you didn't plant before and expect, because you're still centering what you didn't like before. So you have to really shift and allow there's a waiting point, right? I wrote a quote yesterday that, the caterpillars, before they become a butterfly, they literally have to disintegrate into this gooey mush form. It's not just like they go into a cocoon and they get wings and they're just like, they're happy-go-lucky. And yet we often think that that's how that happens. And yet you have to, and so I believe like we as a theater community in LA are sitting we have to like enter this goo phase and allow that to sit and marinate, and then allow whatever this new wings that come for us to manifest itself when it's ready, instead of just trying to push it because we need something to hold that space. I think it's okay to hold space as it is.
Wow. That is so incredible, Dr. Raja. I love the way you think. I truly do. And I'm so glad to have your voice here today.
Yeah, thank you. What you said earlier made me think of it. So,
all right, I think we're ready to start up our next panel. I'm so excited to bring in these theater makers who are changing the way that we think in LA, right? Building those new systems that don't focus in on the old ones. Really focusing in on what we do want and what we do want to plant and how we do want to move forward. Welcome, panelists. Hello, hello, hello. I want to have you introduce yourself, so I won't take any more time. I'll have Jessica start.
Oh, hi. My name is Jessica Hanna. My pronouns are she, her. I am on Tongva, Quiche, and Gabrielina land. I am wearing a black jacket over a shirt that says Queen Says What. I have blonde highlights and black framed glasses over brown eyes. And I am a director, producer, and maker, and a founder of Outside In Theater and Digital.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Jessica. And Donna, can you join? Can you see us? I kind of see
can see you. Can you see me?
Okay,
You
yes.
just surprised me. That's all. That's what that was. I was startled. Hi, I'm Donna Simone Johnson. My pronouns are she and they. I am the co-artistic director of Watts Village Theater Company. I am here and acknowledge the Tongva and Chumash ancestors, elders, and stewards of the land. And I am slightly north of what Angelinos call Inglewood. I am Black, femme presenting with long braids, swept very queerly to one side. I am wearing a black sleeveless shirt, sitting in front of a very cluttered shelf, but there are plants, so don't look at that part. I'm happy to be here. I'm an actor, choreographer, director, producer, community activist, and organizer.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Armando, I see you next.
Yes, hi, Armando Molina, pronouns he, him. I'm the artistic director of Company Angels, and I sit on the ancestral land of the Tongva Gabrielino, and excited to be here.
Us too. We're excited to have you. This panel does indeed rock. I see that in the corner here. Delana, I see you next.
OCO, the Dawa Do On, the Lanagay Deanne Carol Tunes Haywood, Chief Chala. Hi, I am Delana Studi. I'm a proud citizen of the Cherokee Nation and what is formerly known as East, and I'm speaking to you from Cherokee Nation. Because of the removal, this was the original homelands of the Kickapoo, the Kadu, the Osage, and the Osage Chiefs. I am also the artistic director of Native Voices at the Ottery, and the Ottery sits on that as well. I have long brown hair, dark brown eyes. I'm wearing a black top. I have some beautiful beaded earrings by the famous Kathy Peltier. And I'm a proud Cherokee woman. And I'm coming to you in the spirit of Gadugi, which is the Cherokee word of people coming together to celebrate, promote, and I'll take a moment to say Wado Francine, who was the ASL interpreter before, and Wado Allison.
Thank you so much. It's beautiful. Thank you. All right. And Danny, I see you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Danny Feldman, the producing artistic director at Pasadena Playhouse. My pronouns are he, him. I'm coming to you from the unceded lands of the Tongva people. I'm a white person with a buzzed head, sitting with a green sweater, sitting in my office in front of a tacky needlepoint of the Pasadena Playhouse, which I keep close at all times. And I am thrilled to be here with all of you.
I forgot, I am very much like Danny. No hair on my head. I'm Latino, though, and I have a painting behind me, and I'm wearing a very similar outfit to Danny, so sorry about that.
Awesome. Thank you, Armando, for your visual description as well. We appreciate you. Thank you. Wow, folks, what a panel we have before us. I am thrilled to get into this conversation. So let's just hop right in, shall we? We were taking a lot of, I think what we want this panel to focus on, because I think here we have some of the greatest minds in inclusive theater practice, as well as some of the folks who have been doing this for a long, long time, who've been staples in the LA theater community. So I'm excited to hear your voices about what you think comes next. And so I'll offer the first question. What comes after leaving LASA? And I'll offer that to anyone. What comes after leaving LASA? Donna, I see you about to start. You want to start?
I was not about to start, but I'm more than happy to start. Nicely done. I like that. I'm going to take that one. You say something? I mean, we don't know, which is really exciting, right? I mean, there's no return to normal for anyone. I mean, through a pandemic and uprisings and an uptick in racial violence at the hands of white supremacy, as storytellers, it's our job to archive all of this. So it only seems natural that in our community, especially, everything would be upended. Like there was no returning to status quo anyway. And I actually think that was a natural and naive thought. So I'm glad that here we are in reality. And there are a lot of us on this panel in particular who have been waiting for a breath and space and ways to connect theaters in Pasadena and in Watts. And this year, this Zoom thing has offered that opportunity to us, a lot of accessibility that was not in place before. And I don't want to take up too much time because I know that we're probably behind time, but I will say that that word accessibility is what is what comes next for all of Los Angeles, including those south of Jefferson. That includes Black and Indigenous and Asian and Latinx and immigrant and disabled parties and bodies, LGBTQIA plus two-spirit, trans, I mean, all of us and all of our intersectional identities. LA Theater needs to be a place for that, and to see yourself on the stage and in the boardrooms and the leadership rooms and a part of whatever arts service organization comes next. And that also includes the children's, the babies, the education programs, right? I think that that's one thing that an organization should be umbrellaing, is trying to figure out how do we engage the next generation of theater makers and theater artists. And there are a lot of companies doing that really, really well. CTG is doing it well, Rogue Machine, right? 24th Street Theater, Cornerstone, just to name a couple, Watts Village, just to name a couple. And so there are ways to do so, and although none of us have money, we're able to try to figure out how to inspire the next generation. Because I think at the end of this, like if we don't get it together, we don't know if theater's going to come back in a year or 2 or 5, right? As we've known it, as we expect it to be. But if we don't get it together, we will have told 1 or 2 generations of bodies and experiences and identities that you don't belong and you don't matter. And we will use you to put you on the stage and bring in ticket sales, but we don't want your opinion or your voice. And I don't think that's true. Like I look at my colleagues and I'm like, we all want to make the same kind of quality art for our community. And we all want better access to community and nodes of connection. And I think we've just not had the time or space or breath to do so. So it's nice that this building has been toppled so we can sort of grab what door and what window might work and then build something new and really exciting.
Agreed.
Yeah, absolutely. That's dead on right, Donna. The thing that jumped out at me just now in terms of everything you just said was we don't have money. And that's something I live with on a daily basis as the artistic director of what's we like to call ourselves the oldest repertory theater company in LA, founded in 1959 by Leonard Nimoy, Mr. Spock. But I see this as an opportunity, as a pivot point, a fork in the road, this whole tragedy with the Ovation Awards, which was a symptom of a disease,
Yes.
frankly, of a virus that's been with us since the inception of this country and beyond and before then. But for me, it's about equity, right? The thing that this, what's the future organization, if any? Because I've heard folks say, "Hey, do we even need a service organization, another LASA?" That could be up for debate. But if there is something, it has to be an organization that equals the playing field, meaning that small companies of color like Company of Angels and others are, their job would be to allow us to flourish to the point, to a level that's commensurate with who we serve in this city. Because this is a city, after all, that's majority people of color, and collectively we don't have get the resources in order to do that. I've just resource money. Show me the money. Is just like that film, you know what I'm saying? So for me, that's the essential part of what's next.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I would like to jump in. I would like to say that, in regards to access, it is the most hoarded luxury. For the first time in our theater company, we had access. It was a level playing field because we all had to start off on Zoom, and we're all figuring out how to do these Zoom readings. And so for my community, especially here where I'm speaking in Cherokee Nation, it was the first time a lot of our people had internet or access to internet. And it was because of our tribes putting money to save our elders. They didn't want our children going to school and passing the disease on to our elders. Because when we lose an elder, we don't just lose a loved one.
Yeah.
We lose a language, a culture, a history, a ceremony. And when we can't speak our language, we can't do our ceremonies. So it's a big deal to lose an elder. And it's very important to us to protect as many elders as possible. And a lot of Native communities have been hit hard with COVID. However, because of this, we were able to do virtual schooling, which means communities on the reservation in the rural areas finally had access to internet. My parents are on satellite internet because there are no cables where we live. And so this is amazing for us, simply because for Native Voices, it was the first time that our community got to see plays about them. They got to see plays. In many cases, it was the first time their families got to see them work. Our actors, our playwrights. And also access-wise, we have a short play festival. This year we showcased 9 different playwrights, And for the first time ever, because we were able to do it through this Zoom world and we were able to have access to audiences we didn't have prior, we received already 7 commissions. Wow. So this is huge for us. It's the first time that we can actually make a statement and get our native playwrights and our native actors out there. And this is something, I don't know about you, but I'm not going to let this go. This is a luxury I want to keep forever, and I'm going to fight it tooth and nail. It's going to happen.
That's it.
And I feel like I was, I kind of cheated because my first year as artistic director at Native Voices started in February. I honestly had my first 2 weeks in the office before COVID happened and we shut down. So I've been working remotely. So, I feel like this is, for me, it was a really wonderful time to actually seize the reins and actually take advantage of what was happening and try to find the silver lining. So, yeah, and the old ways were never working.
No, not for
We're
everyone.
never working.
But they were built to not work for most of us in this group, right?
Yes,
absolutely.
And that connectivity that we've had that you mentioned there, being able to connect with one another on so many different levels, I think is a lot of what has propelled us forward into the space that we're in now, where we are, as Donna was saying earlier, able to take breath, able to take space, and able to occupy that space in the fullness of our the intersections of our existence, right? We're able to create things with each other, for each other, by each other, right? I want to talk a little bit about the after, right? The after coronavirus, the after we're able to open our theaters in a real way. Or in the way, I guess I should say, not a real way, because we've been doing real theater over Zoom. We've been doing real theater over, the phone and doing readings. I have a friend upstairs who borrowed my ring light last night because she was like, I just want to do some cold reads, We're all making theater and we're all making art. But what can we do in the after time to continue to remove these barriers to access? Because I'm seeing, even on the community chat board here, there's so many people who are saying, I feel invisible. I feel like I haven't been able to go into these spaces. I feel like I haven't been able to continue this work that I want to do. And Delana, to your point, having so many wonderful opportunities right now is beautiful. How do we continue that as we move forward and build new?
Honestly,
go, please. Delana, go.
I was going to say we continue doing what we're doing right now, which is building each other up.
Mm-hmm.
I always give the great example of the Washington football team. That is an issue that my community has been fighting for generations, or at least 4 decades, and nothing has been made. There have been no strides made in our favor. We get close and then we get taken back, but it was through the Black Lives Matter amplifying our voice that we were finally heard. And so if there's anything we learned from this, it's we're stronger together. So how do we keep building each other up? How do we keep amplifying each other's voice? How do we embrace this intersectionality and move forward?
Right. Absolutely. That's incredible. Jessica, you had something you wanted to add to that.
Yes. Well, and I love that example. Thank you, Delana. The word that keeps coming up, and as we've said it a number of times here, community. And I think we need that investment in our community. I also wanted to point to the Leaving LASA. There's a large part of our Los Angeles theater making community that was not part of LASA, that was not either could not afford to be in it or could not find a way in. And so that part of our community was already outside of this other community and another community. So as we are personally exploring for ourselves what community means through this past year of tragedy and reckoning, that if that can then pervade into our artistic community, our work community, I think that it is about us constantly checking in with our community and taking care of each other and making sure that we are bringing everyone along, though it may take more time, though it may take more work, that this is essential for how we are to move forward. Because if we move forward together, again, as you were saying, we're stronger. And I hope that everyone is looking at what community means. I mean, community is also a very touchy word in the theater. Community theater has over in my lifetime has meant many different things. And I think that we all have to embrace that community is the best of ourselves. It is how we will lift each other up, and we need to look at how we use that, not just the word but the feelings about it, and to make sure that we are not leaving anyone behind.
Yes, Dr. Raja spoke earlier about that belonging piece, making
Yeah.
sure that we all have a space to belong, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to go to some of our questions. Oh, Danny, yes, I actually have a question for you too. So go on. Yeah.
I was just going to say that sparked a lot within me. So thank you, panel, and thank you all the people making the comments. Our community is showing up, and that's wonderful. But you know, Armando, to your original question or what you surfaced about some people saying, do we even need a service organization? And then tying that, Gabby, to what you were asking about what comes next. From my seat, I think, of course, we need a service organization. I think what we are seeing, what we have seen in the past couple of years, what we have seen with this latest example of Ovation Awards, but broader, we have seen groups like Martha's group pop up. We've seen other peer groups, and all of that has a lack of unity, of unification around it. And I think to me, the word alliance and LA Stage Alliance is the key word. And the fact is, what we did just see in the last couple of weeks was an alliance of folks saying we are leaving, an alliance of folks coming together with a shared values and principles. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't just about this one incident. It really wasn't. To me, it was about something much broader and a need and a cry out from our community for coming together, for alliance. So I believe that what's next is digging deeper into that, to all of the comments that have come so far tonight about what are our shared values and principles and goals and vision for what our theater community means and all of the complexity of that word and that phrase. What does that mean? And never forgetting that a service organization, this has been said a couple times here, but a service organization is designed to lift a community, to hear a community, to see a community and understand exactly what the needs are, not just of a few, not just of larger institutions, but to really understand and get into what the needs are of the community, and then take action to leverage the power of the field, the power of all of us together to raise funds, to stake a claim, and here are our goals, here's what we're trying to do, here's how we're trying to build audience, all of these things. If, you know, for those who've been around LA theater for a long time, and I certainly have, the Ovation Awards original impetus wasn't just about honoring our artists in our community. It was a cry out saying, we are not getting visibility as a theater community. And if we create this, it will get visibility. Mm-hmm. So what does that mean now? That was decades ago. What does that mean now? And what are we all trying to do together? And how do we take a step together?
Right. And I think more than anything, to speak to your point there, Danny, as well, that I was talking to somebody the other day about what we could do to consolidate, and this was before any of this was happening, what we can do to consolidate the power that we have as a theater community, right? And what we can do to move forward. And the response from them was, LA's not a theater town. And I was like, as an artist who makes a living in LA theater, I would like to disagree with you. LA is a theater town, and the visibility now that we have these eyes on us, right? We have the eyes of the folks who are here joining us today, and we have the eyes of folks who have been watching this conversation unfolds nationally, right? So then when we ask what comes next, we've already kind of seen the first steps, right? Gaining that visibility as a community. Now, as a community, how do we come together and step into that space and step into that light and move forward with this moment in mind and the backstory of where we've come from into where we are going, which I think is a really powerful place to start. I'm going to take some questions here from our community jam board. One of the things someone was asking, oh my goodness, these are such great questions, y'all. It's really fun to watch. And thank you so much to everybody who contributed to the jam board. If you want to keep contributing, please do. We're all used to talking about things. This person says, what are you going to do tonight and going forward each day? Can you all speak to what you're doing moving forward as artists and what you're doing moving forward as leaders of companies, of organizations, and of, you know, this movement as we continue? if you choose to take that mantle. Ooh, I'm gonna pick somebody. Donna?
This time I had something to say, so good call, good call. I'm going to say, well, today and yesterday and probably for the next year, I can say for everyone, we're at this table, and we have, a lot of us have fought really hard for these rooms that we're in and these tables that we're at. And we're here and we're inspired, we're empowered, a little invigorated. I'm kind of tired, but people are invigorated. They've got energy, right? And I think that collectively, we have an eye toward the tomorrow, but we understand that people will have to be unseated in order to get there. And this is answering your question. What are we doing? Well, we're building the community around that. So people who do need to get up and step off, do so in love, in their heart, right? And for the community and the greater good. But actions like that, actions like this, coming together on Zoom, all of these things ensure that, number one, theater will not be dead. John Steinbeck says that theater's been dying for thousands and thousands of years. But, well, number one, ensure that theater won't be dead, but also that when we do get back, the rooms look like this because now we know each other, right? Like now we can call people up. Now we've actually built those real connections that are authentic and not calling your Black friend when you need a Black actor for your Black play about Black trauma. But now you actually know someone, right? You know their ethos and their energy and how they work and what they think and all of that. This space curates that. This chat curates that. The Together in LA, that helped to plant those seeds that we are now sowing.
Yeah. Yeah. Incredible. Oh, Donna, I think we lost you at the end there.
I cut myself off because I'll keep talking.
Thank you so much, Donna. I think that those are such great points. And to say that we're at this table is one of the best points that you can possibly make. We're here, we're having these conversations and talking not only about what we want to do, but what we're gonna do, right?
And if I can add to that, Gabby, it's I'm also thinking about how do we also make the table bigger, right? Because I think that's how you shift the power structure. It's not just taking over the table, but trying to figure out, is the table even useful anymore? Or are there cultures where we all get to sit on the ground and that's actually more accessible? Like, do we just shift the table? And do we just change how we eat? Like what, I think there's, I mean, again, I'm a metaphor person, clearly you can tell, but like, we have to, even when we're sitting at the table, we have to question, is the table necessary? And then how can the table, like that's to your piece earlier around like inclusion versus belonging. Inclusion means everyone gets to sit at the table. Belonging means the table becomes whatever they need it to be to exist in that space and be seen as they are.
I didn't know where the table was. The table was moved to another place for so long. One of the sad things about this year, it was a tragic year with a lot of loss and death and horror. But unfortunately, it does become a sort of a catalyst for real consciousness raising and race consciousness raising. And I think that we need to take advantage of this moment and this circumstance of COVID and Black Lives Matter and the deaths and the horror that we've endured for the last year, at least, or 4 if you want to count the previous administration, that we can use this time to really coalesce around the notion that power needs to be shared, right? And earlier, I don't know who mentioned that we need to decenter white power in terms of the theater community, because this is what we're doing here is a metaphor, frankly, for the country, and we can be leaders in that regard. So I think that this is an amazing opportunity, and we must seize it. And I feel super grateful for the fact that I'm sitting here. I don't know hardly any of the folks over the last year. Gary mentioned that we had the ATLA meetings. That's 70 theater companies. There were faces and voices that I never saw before. But in that event, we start to challenge the status quo. Right. And I'm so glad that those voices that have dominated the conversation for many years are still open to hearing my voice saying, can you step aside, or can you include us, make the table rectangular, octagonal, whatever shape you want, as long as I'm sitting on it.
Yeah. I also just want to call forward into the space that this is a moment, right? And we're experiencing something that is unprecedented in a lot of ways, and also such a big illustration of how this country moves, how this theater as a whole moves. But I also want to call forward that there are people at the center of all of those things, and that this is a time of great pain, and that this is a time where individuals are, losing elders, like Delana was saying. This is a time where individuals are losing loved ones. This is a time where lives are being compromised. So I just wanted to call forward into the space that while we talk about this being an unprecedented moment for spaces opening up, I also just want to call forward that there are people at the center of what that means holistically. So thank you so much for that.
May I add? Oh, sorry.
Please.
I just want to add that I really hope that we continue to allow time to be its own, or to have. I mean, it has done. Time is its own thing, right? We are all agreed now that we have no control over time. Correct? if we didn't know before, we do now. And so to allow for the time to be thoughtful about what we're doing. These conversations are amazing. And then also, what is the actions that can come out of these conversations, and the time it will take to do those actions, and the energy it will take to do those actions, and to continue to do those actions. I think there are ways that we can support each other as we listen to each other by helping to find what those actions are. And then what can I do with my skills to support and to make action happen for my community, for the people around me. And I think it's there's that way of being an individual, the vertical individual in the horizontal space, right? Yeah. And that as you have to be strong in your individual self in order to be part of this group, in order to help the community. So again, going back to the care that we all have to take of ourselves and our family and our lives, that will then give us energy and strength to be able to do the things that we have to do it's not even about LA Theater surviving. In order for LA Theater to be something that I want to be a part of and go see.
That.
I want to go see all the plays that all of you are going to make, and so how do I help make those plays happen?
I'm a bit leery about the future, I have to say, as I hear this. I just thinking about what Delana said earlier about this situation with COVID, that it allowed us through a Zoom to have more access. Yeah. As soon as this is over, and we stopped producing, we tripled the output and the reach and the product, if you will, over the last year by a factor of 10, because a play costs X number of dollars. A Zoom play, a production that we did a 5-minute play festival, for example, last year, cost hardly anything. It was fees basically, but it wasn't sets and building things. So I'm a little nervous because, again, circling back to the idea of money, is that we don't have the resources as a small theater company of color in Los Angeles to produce and to be as active and present in the ecology of LA theater. So I'm a little nervous actually for the end of this.
Yeah, it's a question of access, right? It's a question of access for sure. Delana, I think you wanted to say something as well. I saw you spark something.
Oh yes. Well, it was just going back to the whole conversation about decentralizing. That's not enough. We have to decolonize. We have to indigenize. I'm very happy that we started using BIPOC, because for a long time that I was invisible, and in some cases it still is. And so one of the things that I always like to talk about is we have to shift the paradigm. America is all about the hierarchy. It's the triangle. Who's on top, who's on bottom. That's not my people. My people, it's a circle, because we don't believe in hierarchy. There are no gendered pronouns in my language because that creates hierarchy. People are people. And so how do we switch that over, especially when so many of us are so confined to that paradigm? We want to be the one that's on top. We don't realize by turning it and making it this huge circle that we all have shared power. And that way we can, I keep bringing up the word Gadugi, but that's, 7 generations after the Trail of Tears, that's when Gadugi was going to make itself known. And I am the 7th generation after the Trail. And I firmly believe in this philosophy. And this is a time for all of us to start building, promoting, and supporting each other. So you want to know how we support each other? We cross-promote each other's shows. We tell our audiences about the other shows. People of color want to help people of color. So why don't we make that easier for them? Why don't we create a coalition where people can actually find information, know where to go?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I would like to also speak to your point and say that to the white organizations that are doing that right now, but announcing the work of other white organizations, what are the works of organizations of color that you can start speaking to directly as well? Whose work can you start speaking to directly? And Danny, I want to call into space here as well that you had some and Pasadena had some very, very wonderful things to say, I think, about supporting EWP. Can you speak to, and this is actually a community question, so I want to make sure that I'm calling out that this came from the Jam board. I want just to hear about what, to speak to Delena's point and also this question, how did that moment come together for you where you recognized that this is something that needed to be seconded?
Yeah, in that moment, to talk about that moment really goes back long before I was at this institution. And that goes back, for all of you who know the history, to Sheldon Epps being at this institution for 20 years. So the DNA of the Pasadena Playhouse, thanks to his work and what he made here at the Playhouse, I stepped into that. That was something I didn't earn. I was hired for a job that was already part of this organization and part of the culture here, part of our staff and part of everything we stood for. So my job was really, with that lit torch from him to further that. And particularly with East West Players, we've co-pro'd with East West Players before I was here and multiple times since I've been here. Snehal's a very close friend. And in all of our efforts as an institution, they were equal partners in every single way an equal partner is. And so for us, and I know for other colleagues at some of the larger institutions and some of the smaller institutions that I spoke with, this was not a challenging decision for any of us to make. This was very simple of the right thing to do. And in many ways, as I said earlier, we are all aligned in that way. And that comes with the privilege of being in a mid-sized organization or a large organization or that it is our job to do that. That is our responsibility. And so to me, we are members of a larger community who all move in sync together. There's nothing about calling one out or the other out. We're all moving together on this. So that was our perspective on it and why this wasn't a challenging decision, I think, for us.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for speaking to that, and for speaking to that for those who might not be sure where to start on that as well, or where that comes from. I have one more question for the group because I know we have to close here, and I don't want to let any of you go. I'll be honest. But this comes from the community Jam board, and I'll kind of contextualize to ask, hearing a lot of theory and support and love, not a lot of clear action plan. What does come next? And so I'll ask, what is one action that we can do in the Los Angeles theaterscape, right, to centralize marginalized folks? What is one action we can take right now today? Anyone can answer that.
I'm going to jump in. Honestly, we have a new show opening tomorrow, Super Indian. It's a radio show. It's free access because that's the important thing. If you want to support Indigenous people, show up and listen to our work. And it will be streaming, so you can go to Native Voices and you can find out about it. It's opry.org/Native Voices. But that's one way you can do it. It's how do we support each other and get the work out there? And another thing you can do is if you are a theater and you have never produced a Native play or any other play by a person of color, it's past time. So find out how to do that. I know in 2018 there were so many theaters I was the first production of so many theaters as the first Native playwright, and some of the first Native woman playwright. And so you have not done a play of color, change that. Don't keep relying on our communities to always be the one that's showcasing our people. You have to help do that too.
Yes, absolutely. Jessica, I see you next. What's one thing we can do right now?
I mean, anyone who has access, open the door, pull out a seat, bring all the food, make the table, do all the things. And then if you're look like me and you're white, walk away and tell everybody about what's happening over there and tell everybody about it, like amplify. You know, that is also part of, like, there are times when I am necessary and there are times when I am not. And so to really pay attention to that and to know that decentering is sometimes about really taking a step back.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. Donna, one thing we can do.
I will say, no matter where you are, whether you're representing an organization or an individual artist or just starting out or thinking about going into theater arts, you are in a position to be able to reach out and someone to grab your hand and for you to help them up, no matter where you are. Even if you're saying, just follow this light, I don't know where I'm going either, let's go together. And I think that that is how we can all come together and really support each other in our anti-racist, but also in our anti-bias goals as a community.
Yes, absolutely. Danny, I see you next. What's one thing?
No, these are all wonderful things. Yes to all of them. I'm taking notes also and listening. I think the power of leveraging those of us who have organizations with resources, many of us have already been doing this and need to do it much more, of leveraging the power of our institutions to lift up the entire community and those who are particularly vulnerable and not getting the exposure, and find a way to pierce through, because we do have, as much as this is an internal conversation right now, we have to address, because it has not been said, there's an external problem in LA theater in terms of paying audience members, coming to all of the theaters that we're talking about. And how do we solve that problem? How do we leverage each other, the resources that some of us have, or sharing all of that? But that is, to me, has always been a core problem of LA theater that needs to be addressed head on.
And Armando?
So yeah, how do we build back better? As our Uncle Joe has coined that fabulous phrase, I think it's everything that everyone has said here, because it is about resources. It is about uplifting those on the margins and marginalized theaters. And so with that, I invite everyone to come to Boyle Heights. Once the doors are open, please come. Our casa is your casa, as they say. And so that's really it. It's about uplifting our brothers and sisters.
Incredible. Thank you so much to this wonderful panel. Does anybody have any final thoughts they want to share with anyone before we close? Oh yes,
I just want to jump in. I gotta say this because I've been thinking about it. Like, what is something I want to see? Like, I want us to, like, can we not have awards for at least a couple years? And can we have gatherings and celebrations? And like, let's all get together and celebrate each other and celebrate the work we're doing. But stop with the hierarchical awards and any of that. Like, can we just let that one go? Maybe LA is different and we don't have an award show. Maybe that's one of the things that makes LA, LA.
The West Coast has always been a leader, and it trickles to the East Coast. So maybe that's a great idea.
Incredible.
I do have one. I'm so sorry. I sort of petered out at the end of mine because I was like, I know I forgot something. I'm like, where did I put it? Hire designers that have been traditionally minoritized. Find plays and produce those plays in a workshop or on your stage, even better, and bring people on your boards. If you look around, you're like, who's not here? Go find them. They're out there. We're out there. Bring them on.
I want to jump on that bandwagon. So thank you, Donna Simone. Hire our people, not just when you're doing a person of color show.
Come on.
Hire our designers for any piece. Hire our actors for any role. Get us out there. Use us.
Speak on it. Because if you're looking for somebody, they likely exist from the communities that have been marginalized. If you're looking for somebody, and if they don't, it's because it has been very hard, as Bruce A. Lemon Jr. said at our first town hall, it has been very hard for them to become that person. So if you don't know someone, grow someone. We love that. All right. Thank you so much to our fabulous panelists. I'm so glad you're able to join us tonight. Thank you so, so much. Thank you to all of you. And I cannot wait to see what lies in store for the rest of this beautiful conversation that we're going to continue to have within LA Theater. Thanks so much.
Gabby, thank you for your badass facilitation.
Thank you so much. Oh my goodness. I'm uplifted, Dr. Raja, I must say, by your ability to contextualize all of these conversations in a way that is so accessible. In the chat, I don't know if you looked over here, but everybody was like, get rid of the table, no more table, everybody sits on the floor. And I think that's so real, right? Because I can name on my hand, the tables that I've been able to sit at that I didn't create myself. We created this table of JJI to allow for people to be able to speak freely in these kinds of conversations, and to also face up to their complicit nature or their actively harmful or actively violent nature. We have an assessment and we do all of this work, right? But inside of these communities, what we're hearing, I think most of all, is a lack of belonging and a lack of access, a lack of understanding. Do you have any thoughts on what we do to move forward in the spirit of belonging?
We find ways to clone you and the folks that have been on this panel, right? And we put them into the world more so. No, I mean, I jokingly, but also serious. Right? I again, thank you for just this fostering this space, and both you and all the folks that are involved, right? Like, I feel honored to be a part of the conversation and think about, there is always something we can do, right? And that could just be listening. And so, there is a Winston Churchill that has a quote like, great leaders talk, but even greater leaders listen. Right. Like listening is also an important form of leadership. So for those of us that I had a conversation with a friend of mine a couple of weeks ago who was like, I need to, he's a white Jewish cis man and straight man. And he was like, well, I want to support people of color. What do I do with all the stuff that's happening in Atlanta? And I was like, have you talked to your people? Have you listened to your people? Like, where are your people? Go talk to your people. So I think that listening is so important, and also recognize like, we often have most power in our communities, and that's where we have to actually do the work, because the allyship of other communities means that we challenge things in our own communities, right? And the last piece, my last quote is an Indigenous activist from the southern hemisphere, Lila Watson, right, who says, if you have come here to help me, you are wasting your time. But if you have come here because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together. And I think that is, for me, that's what we need to get to, where our work is seen as liberatory, because I think that is the true purpose of art, the true purpose of presence, the true purpose of creating and cultivating belonging is for our collective liberation. And I think and even tonight, right, the fact that 400 people are watching this conversation, and how many more stories do we have to sit and engage with and hear and love and hold up, right? How do we hold up each other? I mean, that's the question that I'm sitting with myself, is how do I hold other people, but also how do I hold myself up as I need to heal, given all the things that are happening in the world?
Wow. So powerful, Dr. Raja. Thank you so, so much. And I also just want to name that I personally think that one of the ways that we can continue to hold ourselves and each other up is to allow ourselves the space to continue these conversations and continue this action forward, even after the limelight of this moment has worn off. So often, as a person of color, I feel like I have to monopolize and take advantage of this moment right now, that violent haste, right, to continue this and build upon when people care. Because for me, after the explosion of attention on the Black Lives Matter movement, it felt a lot like people disappeared. People stopped holding me in the way that they were. And now, as another life is reduced to a hashtag, right?
Ugh.
We're watching more people reach out and reach across. And so many lives are being reduced to hashtags, right? We're watching people reach across in new ways. But I think it's important to continue that reach, even when those things aren't going on, and continue to hold each other and ourselves, like you said, Dr. Raja, even when those things aren't going on.
Well, and you make me think about what we talked about, right? The performativity, right? The hashtag is great because it gets you feel like you're doing something, which is a good starting point. But then what are you doing after? Like, what's the next step? And are we able to even ask that question of what else am I going to do? Regardless of who we are, because if we are in this circle, we have privilege, right? I think it's often feel like compared to the dominant community, we are so disenfranchised. And yet that's also such a deficiency focused model that denies, I think, 600 years of colonization and enslavement and direct intentional violence. And yet we are here as a global majority, which means that we are intentionally resilient. And so how and where do we sit with what that next step is? Because that is what our ancestors have done that has given us the chance to be here today.
Yes. And as we funnel that towards what we're talking about here today, we can ask ourselves and continue to ask ourselves, what comes after leaving Lhasa? I want to thank you so much, Dr. Raja, for joining us. I want to thank our interpreters, Francine and Allison. Thank you so much for being here today. I also want to say thank you to the Pasadena Playhouse, Center Theater Group, Geffen Playhouse, A Noise Within, and East West Players for providing the crucial support for our small and unfunded organization to be able to bring this conversation forward. I am so glad to be here and so glad to speak with these panelists tonight, who I also want to offer a huge thanks to for joining in this conversation and being brave enough to speak to our community. Thank you all so much on behalf of the Joy Jackson Initiative and on behalf of myself as a human being. I just thank you all for being here tonight. And with that, we close. Thank you so much, friends. We're going to keep going with having some folks, their commentary come up. So keep watching after our live stream. All right. Have a good night. Thank you so much.